put 50 million Americans on alert as the country reels from deadly weekend storms, the latest in recovery efforts.
This administration acted within the confines of the law, and we are wholly confident that we are going to win this case in court.
ICE deportations back in court again as a judge hears arguments on whether or not Homeland Security officials openly defied his weekend orders. Why the administration says that order came too late. Plus, consumer spending ticks up. Why the latest report is still a warning sign that an economic downturn could be headed our way. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Good Monday evening to you. I'm Dee Gatton. We're so glad you're here with us. Right now, over 50 million Americans are under red flag warnings as forecasters warn of critical fire weather conditions tonight across a large part of the southern and central plains, as well as parts of Florida. Some of the cities at highest risk right now are Denver and Colorado Springs, Colorado, Oklahoma City and Tulsa, Oklahoma, as well as Miami, Florida. Tomorrow, the risk increases to extremely critical for parts of New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma, where a wildfire outbreak is likely. Critical conditions extend into Arizona and parts of the central and southern high plains. Now, some of the cities most at risk are Lubbock, Amarillo, Midland, and Odessa, Texas, and Clovis, New Mexico. This all comes as the National Weather Service is still surveying damage from an intense storm system that killed at least 42 people. Just look right here at all the wreckage. The bomb cyclone low pressure system spawned destructive wildfires and over 50 tornadoes in the central U.S. The National News Desk Amanda Chin spoke with residents of Christiana, Tennessee about what they experienced.
A roof of a garage torn off, large trees and limbs now on the ground. That's what Danny Jimenez saw when he walked outside of his home in Christiana.
By the time we can even look outside, it is loud, it is rushing. Only thing I can describe it as is like a waterfall. So much water was moving that you couldn't really see much outside.
Jimenez's 7-month-old baby, wife, and in-laws were sheltering in a closet and bathroom, thanking God they're all okay.
You're so helpless. Like, I saw wind knock that tree over like it was nothing, right? If I was in the way, man, they're moving me way across the city.
Just down the street is Matthew Powers, who also had his wife, in-laws, and children taking cover in a pantry closet.
It started off pretty mild, but I was kind of like, oh, I guess it's a little more serious than I was ready for this weekend.
Powers has had some close calls with tornado warnings before, but this time he felt like this tornado was right on top of his house. A few miles down the road, Alex Weatherford, who actually saw the tornado taking shape, watching the clouds form and start to come closer.
Not too sure how it was going to end and how strong it was going to get.
Powers says he feels like he's a magnet for storms.
It just seems like every single time there's a big storm warning, we are always right in the midst of not only the watch, but when there is a tornado, it always seems to at least be close to us.
Happening now, a federal judge is holding a hearing regarding the Trump administration's timing of deporting alleged Venezuelan gang members. The judge had ordered the flights to return to the U.S. over the weekend. White House border czar Tom Homan said the decision to not turn the flights around was not a violation of that court order.
By the time the other order came, the plane was already over international waters with a plane full of terrorists and significant public safety threats. And, to turn a plane around over international waters, we're going to refuel over international waters, come back and bring terrorists back to the United States. That's not what this president promised American people. What the president did was exactly the right thing.
Separately, a hearing set today for an assistant professor at Brown University deported over the weekend to Lebanon has been postponed by her lawyers as they requested more time to submit their motions. 34-year-old Dr. Rasha Alawieh, a Lebanese citizen, was living in Rhode Island on an H-1B visa. A federal judge ordered a delay of her deportation after she was detained last week to consider the matter. Alawieh is currently back in Lebanon, which her lawyers say is a violation of the judge's order. Here is a live look over Providence, Rhode Island, near protests at the State House. Brown University students are protesting Dr. Alawieh's deportation. The school now issuing warnings to students and staff about international travel during the upcoming spring break. A campus-wide email says students leaving the country could face delays upon re-entry. A federal appeals court has ruled against the Trump administration's attempt to pause reinstatement of fired federal workers. In a 2-1 decision, the court said reversing a lower court ruling against the administration would disrupt the status quo. The full appeal is still ongoing. And a U.S. military warship being deployed to help with security at the southern border. It's an unusual mission for a Navy destroyer, and as part of Northern Command's mission, the USS Gravely will conduct patrols in the Caribbean Sea or Gulf of Mexico, renamed Gulf of America by President Trump. It's an area typically overseen by the Coast Guard.
We're surging a Stryker Brigade combat team down there to reinforce the land border as well. But there's a sea component to this as well, and that's part of the mission of the USS Gravely is to secure the water routes in defense of our southern border.
The USS Gravely is a guided missile destroyer most recently deployed in the Middle East, shooting down Houthi militant munitions. President Trump will talk to Russian President Putin on the phone tomorrow as Trump continues his efforts to end the war in Ukraine.
A lot of work's been done over the weekend. We want to see if we can bring that war to an end. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but I think we have a very good chance.
Ukraine has accepted a 30-day ceasefire proposed by the U.S., but Russia hasn't yet. Trump says negotiators have discussed dividing up certain assets. Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, seizing significant territory in the east. It annexed the Crimean Peninsula in 2014. The search is on for a suspect accused of setting someone on fire in New York's Times Square. This apparently happened yesterday morning. Authorities say they are narrowing their search and the victim knows who did it, but did not give any further information as this investigation is still ongoing. Police also said they don't believe this was a random attack. Police showed up to the popular tourist spot early Sunday morning. Officers think the 45-year-old man may have had flammable liquid thrown on him. He was rushed to a hospital and is now in stable condition. Authorities are investigating the deaths of twin brothers found at the top of a mountain in Georgia. Hikers found the bodies of 19-year-old Kadir and Nazir Lewis with gunshot wounds on Bell Mountain on March 8th. Authorities believe it may have been a murder-suicide, but family members say they don't believe that. A GoFundMe campaign to help with funeral expenses has raised almost $25,000. Democrats are divided on strategy after Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer helped pass a Republican funding bill, while many in his party argued they should dig their heels in and oppose it. The National News Desk, Matt Galko, reports from Washington on the divisions within the party.
Democrats are openly airing their grievances with leadership in the party. The criticism has been relentless over how Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer handled a GOP government funding bill, choosing to ultimately support it and avoid a government shutdown.
He's absolutely wrong. I mean, look at the reality of the votes, right? I understand that the American people are frustrated. Please believe many of us did not sleep because we were calling and trying to impress upon the senators the importance of pushing back in this moment.
Frustrated Democrats viewed taking a stand and potentially shutting down the government as one of their only levers of power against Republicans and Donald Trump, using a shutdown to leverage negotiating against policy they disagreed with. Schumer argued a shutdown would have empowered Trump, Elon Musk, and the Department of Government Efficiency to further gut federal agencies.
Senator Schumer certainly can lead this caucus.
Is he the best person?
He can lead this caucus, but we need to have a conversation inside the caucus about whether we are willing to stand up to Republicans.
Democrats have struggled to rally around a unifying message since Trump's election win in November. The latest fractures also showcase the difficulties the party is having in finding a leader to navigate its path forward.
Okay, so, there's actually little that the Senate minority leader can say, and the 10 Democrats that voted with the Republicans can say, to appease somebody like me, I'm about to change my registration to independent.
The backlash comes as poll numbers for the party as a whole are seemingly in the tank. A CNN poll from the weekend had the party's favorability at just 29%, an all-time low for their survey. An NBC poll had the party's popularity at just 27%, also an all-time low in that poll. And Schumer postponed a book tour that was supposed to begin this week, citing security concerns, as some groups were trying to organize protests against the Senate's Democratic leader.
Matt, has Senator Schumer said anything about the turmoil that he's at the center of?
Well, he seems pretty firm in his decision and all of the heat that is coming with it. He told the New York Times over the weekend that he believes the party has a direction now, and their goal is to get back to being the party of working people.
All right, Matt Galko reporting tonight from the Capitol. Thank you. Today, President Trump toured the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., then presided over a board meeting. He placed himself as chair of the board in February after he ousted the art institution's leadership. He vowed to make the center a very special and exciting place. The president says a lot of money has been wasted on features no one will see, and reform needs to come to the center.
I thought it was important because I've been hearing reports, and I thought it was very important to make this good. It's a very big part of the fabric of Washington, D.C., and we're going to make our capital great again, just like we're going to make our country great again.
The lawsuit against the environmental group Greenpeace wrapping up. The jury now deliberating after closing arguments were presented. The pipeline company Energy Transfer sued over months-long protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline in 2016 and 17. The company says Greenpeace incited protesters to hurt its reputation and delay construction. Greenpeace says the case is designed to drain its funds and silence future protests. Coming up, adding to concerns, what fresh data on American spending signals about the U.S. economy. Then, an urgent warning for people using Gmail, Outlook, and VPNs. What you need to know to protect your data. Then, tourism season kicking off in our nation's capital. The event's drawing people from across the country. We'll be right back. Welcome back. For a third week in a row, wholesale egg prices fell in the U.S. The Department of Agriculture report shows prices dropped $2.70 from the week before. However, officials note there's been no significant bird flu outbreaks so far in March, and egg demand declined sharply over the past week. Still, they add it will be some time before the price drop is reflected in stores. Americans picked up their spending modestly last month, but the retail sales still were weaker than expected, according to a new report from the Census Bureau. As consumers show signs of uncertainty, the White House continues to project confidence about the president's aggressive trade strategy. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar reports from Washington.
America's robust and resilient consumer is showing signs of scaling back. Retail sales in February rose 0.2%, falling short of the Dow Jones estimate of 0.6% growth. It tracks with an 11% drop in consumer sentiment this month, recorded by the University of Michigan's closely watched surveys of consumers. Frequent gyrations in economic policies make it very difficult for consumers to plan for the future, regardless of one's policy preferences.
I think our economy is going to roar.
In an interview with Full Measure's Cheryl Atkinson, President Trump brushes off warnings his tariffs on trading partners, with many more expected as soon as April 2nd, will not only make inflation worse, but increase the odds of a recession.
We as a country have been ripped off for years and years.
The president says his goal is to eliminate America's trade deficits, to create American jobs, and revive domestic manufacturing. By imposing tariffs, Trump says America's trading partners will be pressured to eliminate their own trade barriers on American imports, and if not, the U.S. will benefit from the tariff revenue. Here's one example the president often cites of America being, quote, ripped off.
So we want to sell milk into Canada, and they throw a 270% price increase on the milk.
Canada's policy is a bit more complicated than that. The country allows a certain amount of American dairy to enter the country tariff-free. After that quota is met, then the costly tariffs would kick in. But the U.S. has never even gotten close to exceeding that limit. Canada, along with Mexico and European trading partners who've just been hit with steel and aluminum tariffs, are retaliating with even more tariffs on American products, leaving many to wonder, is all of this worth it?
The reality is that it has taken literally decades to build this globalized economy, for better and for worse. But that cannot be reversed in a day.
The president says there will be economic disturbance, but tells Americans it won't last long. Economists aren't so sure. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Forever 21 plans to close all its U.S. stores. The fashion retailer filed for bankruptcy for the second time yesterday. The court document blames factors like inflation and Chinese competitors Shein and Temu going out of business. Sales are in progress at 350 locations. Forever 21 will stay open online. There's still time for a buyer to take over and keep the stores open. An urgent warning for Gmail, Outlook, and VPN users. The FBI and the U.S. Cybersecurity and infrastructure security agencies say the ransomware gang Medusa has been stealing information and data, then threatening to release it if money is not paid. The feds explaining ransoms are posted with direct hyperlinks to Medusa-affiliated cryptocurrency wallets. Medusa advertises sales of the data to interested parties before the countdown timer ends. Victims can pay $10,000 in cryptocurrency to add a day to the timer. Experts advise Gmail, Outlook, and VPN users to patch and update software and use multi-factor authentication with longer passwords. Since last month, Medusa has affected more than 300 victims. Senate Minority Leader has canceled or at least postponed 3 book tour events this week, citing security concerns. Schumer was planning on promoting his new book, Anti-Semitism in America, a Warning. Protests were planned outside of all 3 stops just days after Schumer changed his opposition to the continuing resolution that passed out of the Senate on Friday. If the vote had failed, it would have caused at least a brief government shutdown. Tuition is now free at Harvard for students' families whose total annual income is less than $200,000. The change takes effect for the 2025-26 academic year. Undergrads whose families make $100,000 or less will also have their housing, their food, their health services covered as well. Tuition at Harvard is a little over $56,000. Room and board adds about another $26,000 a year, according to the school's website. And this just in, we are getting reports the U.S. military is striking Yemen again today after attacks over the weekend killed dozens of people, according to Houthis. The U.S. has been trying to target Houthi capabilities for months as the Iran-backed group has attacked Red Sea ships. This comes after President Trump on social media warned Houthi terrorists to stop the attacks. This week, Sinclair is teaming up with the Salvation Army to launch Sinclair Cares From Homeless to Hope, a nationwide initiative dedicated to raising awareness about homelessness. Tonight, Sinclair national correspondent Angela Brown digs into what's driving this crisis, pushing more families to the edge, just one paycheck away from the street.
Homelessness in America isn't just 10 cities and hard-knock stories like Wesley's.
When I went to college, when I mean naive, I mean naive. I got hooked on drugs and alcohol, and before you know it, I was on the street.
The homelessness crisis is consuming middle America. Your neighbor, your coworker, families barely holding on.
This is about the tens of millions of families who are a missed paycheck away from experiencing homelessness, or a missed car payment, or a missed medical issue. More and more people are struggling to get by.
One number may shatter your image of who's ending up on the streets. The 2024 Homelessness Assessment Report from HUD revealing family homelessness jumped nearly 40% between 2023 and 2024. Families sleeping in shelters, living in their cars with relatives. The driving forces? Experts say a nationwide shortage of affordable housing and the limited reach of housing assistance programs. Jesse Rabinowitz from the National Homelessness Law Center explains.
We're in the middle of a deep housing crisis in this country. 1 out of 4 people worry about imminently becoming homeless, and 1 out of 5 people spend all of their income on rent.
As homelessness rises, so do political battles. On Friday, President Donald Trump signing an executive order seeking to dismantle the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. Houston, planning to invest $70 million to end street homelessness by 2026. But in other cities, new laws ban sleeping outside.
Instead of breaking encampments, housing ends homelessness.
And Wesley Thomas is living proof. After nearly 30 years on the streets, he's now housed, 8 years sober, and giving back on the guest advisory board at Miriam's Kitchen.
I've helped 45 people to put keys in their own apartment, just on my will alone.
Another harsh reality, nearly 150,000 children experienced homelessness on a single night in 2024, a 33% increase over 2023. Sinclair Cares From Homeless to Hope will spotlight this critical issue of homelessness and hopefully connect people with resources. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Coming up, over 1 million people are heading to D.C. for the annual Cherry Blossom Festival. Love this time of year. How much money it is expected to bring for the city? That's coming up right after this. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Washington, D.C., where the Cherry Blossom Festival starts in just days.
The Cherry Blossom Festival is the beginning of the tourism season for Washington, D.C. More than 1 million visitors will make their way here to see the beautiful blossoms and spend money. It's estimated $200 million will be generated.
It starts with heads and beds, so hotels truly benefit in terms of the impact of meetings, leisure travel, domestic and international. restaurants, transportation providers, theater, nightlife, sporting events.
More people visiting the city means more tax dollars, and not just from cherry blossom events. The convention crowd is big too.
Over the 3 nights of the Western Lights Festival, there were over 53,000 different people that showed up. One of those was a young woman so encouraged by the turnout that she went online, started a petition calling on city leaders to shut down Virginia Street more often for more events just like it. Event season kicked off months earlier than usual with the first Western Lights Festival.
Magical. Everybody had just the most magnificent experience. It was a sight to be seen.
Very fun. I loved seeing families out enjoying themselves worry-free.
The turnout reminded lifelong resident Janae Lucas of what downtown used to be like back when she was a kid.
It was pleasing to see everybody out having a great time as a community.
In Ohio, the University of Dayton Arena is ready for the return of March Madness. The NCAA tournament features 8 college basketball teams going head-to-head for a championship title. UD will host the games until at least 2028.
We don't take it lightly. Every year they put out a bid, and we're just honored the fact that they decide to come back to us year after year and host it here in Dayton, Ohio.
Get your brackets done. The first game tomorrow, where St. Francis takes on Alabama State. Coming up, the city's having some of the biggest events today as we celebrate all things Irish. We'll have much more right after this. St. Patrick's Day. Hope your day was lucky. March 17th was originally meant to commemorate Ireland's patron saint, but the holiday has turned into a worldwide celebration of all things Irish: shamrocks, parades, leprechauns, and of course beer. Major festivities underway in Chicago, Savannah, Georgia, Boston, Philadelphia, and Manhattan, U.S. cities with large Irish populations. Across the pond, Dublin and Liverpool are also holding parades celebrating the day. And that's going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tonight at 10.